Welcome to the Triple S podcast. Today we will both recap the NFL draft and talk about the Aaron Rodgers trade. But first, let's talk about the NFL draft. It was filled with a lot of surprises, but none more than the back-to-back picks by the Texans at 2 and 3. The Texans traded up with the Cardinals for the third pick right after their second, where they selected C.J. Stroud, a quarterback from Ohio State. I think that selecting C.J. Stroud sets him up for quarterback of the future. I think he was the best quarterback in his draft. Despite less accolades in college, I think he's more ready for the NFL, both physically and mentally, than Bryce Young. He has the best physical intangibles of any QB in the draft. Because even though Anthony Richardson, obviously, he wowed us all at the combine and at his pro day, he didn't show it in college. And he's athletic with his feet, with his speed, with his jumping ability, and with his arm strength, but the accuracy simply isn't there. So I think that, C.J. Stroud, he had a 69% completion percentage, and that's great in college. It's better than Bryce Young. It's way better than Will Levis's or Anthony Richardson. And I think that that's something that correlates very well to the NFL. So I think that the Texans really got the best quarterback of the draft there. And then with that third pick, they selected Will Anderson, who was probably the best overall player in the draft, the best talent. And I think that having two young anchors on both sides of the ball will help the Texans move up in the division, because the AFC South really doesn't have a lot of talent right now. And C.J. Stroud could be the second best quarterback in that division as a rookie behind Trevor Lawrence. Because if you think about the other quarterbacks in that division, Anthony Richardson was just selected by Indianapolis. We're not really sure what's going on in Tennessee. It could be Will Levis. It could be Malik Willis. It could be Ryan Tannehill. So C.J. Stroud is really a good opportunity in that division. And I think that the other biggest winner of that draft was just in the Super Bowl a couple months ago, and that's the Eagles. They took Jalen Carter with the 9th pick and Nolan Smith with the 30th pick, both from Georgia, to strengthen that front seven already with Fletcher Cox and Jordan Davis, which I think that'll just do wonders for them, and I think that that'll get them back into the Super Bowl this year. I'd say that Jalen Carter was somebody who is a top 3 overall talent in this draft, but obviously some off-the-field issues slid him down the draft board. But I would say that the first-round performance were the Atlanta Falcons, who selected right before the Eagles at number 8, and they chose Bijan Robinson. And while Bijan Robinson's a great running back, I think it's risky to pick a running back in round 1, especially that early, and especially for the Falcons that already had talent at that running back spot. When they needed other positions, especially a wide receiver and a cornerback, many of whom were still on the board, they could have selected Christian Gonzalez, who went number 17th. They could have selected Jackson Smith-Njigba, who went in the 20s. So I think that they left a lot of opportunities there, or they could have traded back. They already have that running back, so I don't understand why they picked Bijan. And that's similar to another first-round draft pick that I didn't like, which was the Detroit Lions picking Jahmyr Gibbs, another running back, with the 13th pick in the draft. And while I think that Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson are both really good players who I do think deserve to be picked in the first round, it doesn't really make sense for the Falcons or the Lions to pick either of those. The Lions, they re-signed David Montgomery not too long ago, and while they did, after the draft, trade DeAndre Swift, I think that DeAndre Swift is a better running back than Jahmyr Gibbs. A first-round pick is still more valuable than DeAndre Swift. It doesn't really make much sense for them to take in Jahmyr Gibbs and then trade DeAndre Swift. The other biggest around the NFL draft, and it happened a little bit later, but it was promised for some time, was Aaron Rodgers going to the New York Jets, which was a blockbuster trade, and it provides the Jets with a realistic chance of winning in a really competitive AFC East. However, they did give up a good amount to get him, though, a couple of first-round draft picks. And, the Jets, it isn't a sure thing that they're going to do well with Aaron Rodgers. So I think it's a little bit risky. And since it's not a long-term solution, Aaron Rodgers is getting older. He just came off his worst season as a starter. He had less than 4,000 yards, which has never happened to him in a healthy season. But for at least this season, I think he'll be in better shape. He has better weapons around him. And the Jets had the best defense in the league last year, which led them to a 7-10 season despite a really terrible offense, which had to start three bad quarterbacks, including Zach Wilson, who's probably going to be backing up Rodgers now. And I think that the future looks sort of grim for Wilson. They're probably going to try to trade him. And he did really poorly last season and the year before that. So I don't know if he'll be considered a draft bust, but he definitely won't get an opportunity to start anytime soon. But with a top five quarterback in the league, I think that the Jets should be about the middle of the pack in the NFL, which is much better than they have been recently. In the division, I don't think they'll be better than the Bills, but they should be better than the Dolphins and the Pats. Dolphins obviously still have Tua, who I think might be better than Aaron Rodgers in the next couple of years, but not right now. And the Pats have Mac Jones, who was rumored to be traded in this offseason and who had a really bad sophomore season last year. And in the NFC North, the Packers, they're going to have to see what Jordan Love can do. He hasn't played any meaningful snaps in that 3 years he's been there. He's just been backing up Aaron Rodgers. And so it'll be interesting to see what he does in comparison to his division rivals, Goff, Fields, and Cousins. I think that he should be better than Goff, but Fields and Cousins are two really good quarterbacks. And I think that Fields is on the way up, so he might be the best quarterback in that division really soon. Kirk Cousins, they were just in the playoffs, but it was a really ugly season, especially near the end. They started off really well, but that first round exit in the playoffs wasn't good. And so it's not a really competitive division now with Rodgers gone. The Bears were the worst team in the league last year. And the Lions, while they did have some good games last season, they still weren't anywhere near competitive. And as I said, Jared Goff really isn't the answer for them. So I think that the Packers may have a chance in that division even without Aaron Rodgers if Jordan Love proves to be even just an adequate quarterback. He doesn't even have to be great. But that's all I have today. There's going to be more NFL news coming up as we go into the off season and as we go into free agency, and I will be covering all that as well as covering the NBA. But until then, bye.